Welcome from me, Nik Gowing. There are so many critical issues to be discussed here at COP26 and so many different time zones, which we've got to cover as well. So let's get a true sense of engagement at the Sustainable Innovation Forum and bringing you something additional, which is the Climate Action Studio. And that's what this is. It's in addition to our live program throughout the day here at COP26. So what I'd like to just underscore to you is that you can follow us at climate_action_ or use the hashtags #SIF SIF 21 or #ClimateActionLive. And what we want to talk about in this next 20 minutes is innovating collective action. Innovating is the key word here. New solutions with practical solutions to things which we take for granted, powered by forward-facing technologies, the speed at which things are being picked up, the algorithms and what is being developed in IT and so on, to inspire collective action from all of us. And I'm joined by Jorn Lambert, who's Chief Digital Officer for Mastercard. Jorn, welcome. Now, what I need to ask you is, what exactly do you do? You're a member of the management committee, but what else do you do at Mastercard?
So thanks, Nick, and delighted to be here, and thanks for having me. So my role as Chief Digital Officer is to look after all consumer products for Mastercard. So any consumer product that, as a user of Mastercard, you use would come from our product development shop.
So you are the Chief Digital Officer. Are you the chief person who is developing new ideas at the frontier for the way these kind of issues can be addressed digitally through the kind of card and the access to bank accounts that all of us are using?
Yeah, that's right. I think in general, we're looking at all innovations, how payments, how commerce evolving, how we meet consumer demand. And one huge consumer demand nowadays is, okay, how do we actually use our products, our payments for a more sustainable economy? And therefore, that's front and center in many of the things that we do.
How much data do you have on us, in fact, about how we spend, which allows you to make this judgment about whether we are spending sustainably?
That's a great question. And so we see trillions of transactions going through our system, but we do not see what people spend. We see where people spend, but we do not see what people spend, nor do we actually know that Nick is the person spending it. We have a number, we have a merchant, and we have an amount. And based on that data, we can provide services to our consumers. But again, you, Nick, or anybody else who is using a Mastercard is actually not a direct consumer of ours, is a consumer of a bank who has given you the card. And so we don't actually have a name, an email address, or a phone number of the person who's spending. We just have an anonymous number and a graph of where that anonymous number is shopping.
Well, now, one of the things that you're pitching very strongly is building an inclusive, sustainable digital economy, which of course everyone is wanting to do at the moment. But be more specific about how you're going to do this and how you can do this, not just for us, the customers and consumers, but also internally. I mean, you must be under quite some pressure from particularly the next generation within Mastercard.
Of course, but before I actually get into perhaps the nitty-gritty of the products that we're evolving, I think there's a first point that is important to make is, as a company, but just any company, as we're thinking about climate action, it always has to start with looking at ourselves, right? It's okay to build products for other people to do the right thing, but we always need to look at our own footprint, and we need to start with decarbonization of our own operations. Now, Mastercard is not a huge emitter. We're not into heavy industry or something, but still, we have our own operations, and we've made commitments towards net zero. We've aligned with the SBTi targets of 1.5 centigrade climate trajectory.
And what changes have you made? Give me an idea. What kind of changes you've made, Jorn?
Well, so for example, we've been looking at our scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, and we've already reduced that from the 2016 start by 44%, our scope 1 and scope 2. We're looking at our scope 3, and we've already reduced that by 57%. And we do that obviously by working with our suppliers on the scope 3, we're looking at sourcing renewable energy, having solar panels, but more importantly, reducing or increasing the efficiencies of our own operations and systems. And so,
were you actually quite surprised at what you were able to achieve, and when you did your audit, what you were burning up?
Well, we were surprised about how a number of actions can materially change emissions, all at the same time, while continuing to grow at a very fast pace, right? And so there is a kind of misnomer, perhaps, that climate action is contrary to business objective or contrary to business growth, that it has to tamper business growth. And I think that is a misnomer. In many cases, there is a lot of low-hanging fruit whereby one can take action and to lower emissions, and there's still a lot of opportunity there. But my point, Nick, is one has to start there, because anything else without that would not really be authentic. And we've done a lot of efforts there. But as I said, we are a relatively small emitter, but we are a huge network. We have a network of 23,000 banks. We are reaching 80 million merchants. We're reaching 3 billion consumers. And so we thought, well, actually, just looking at our emissions is very good, but can we do more? And can we do more by the nature of our business, by the fact that we are a network and by the fact that we can potentially enlist consumers? And that's where our product development thinking went.
But let me, internally, of course, you've got every generation with every experience. How much has it been important to get ideas from inside? Maybe ideas that even you as Chief Digital Officer hadn't really been thinking about. In other words, generating a culture of new ideas, and let's listen, let's talk, let's investigate, let's scope this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a great point, because I mean, look, I do not know a person in my environment or in the company who is not profoundly worried with that. I think everybody is, not just the young generation, Nik, I'm sure you were worried with it as well. And you are obviously young, but perhaps less young than some of our millennials. But not a single person. Yes, not a single person is not concerned with that. And we've seen a groundswell from within our organization on people firstly demanding that that the company takes its social responsibilities. For a decade, we've been looking at financial inclusion and made great strides, but the discussion of this decade is going to be climate, this decade and the ones after that. And so our employees, our customers, banks, our consumers are demanding more from us, and that's where a lot of that comes. And to your point, people have lots of ideas. It's actually not ideas that's missing, it's actually parsing through it and making sure that we remain focused on something that can make impact at scale. That is the challenge, and we believe that we're making good progress on that front.
Well, before we get on to talking about how people are spending money and how you can actually influence them spending the money, again, let me just come back to what you're doing internally. You're a well-known global brand. Have you really adapted the culture internally in order to embrace the enormity and the necessity and the speed of achieving net zero? In other words, there isn't a lot of time, so help us.
Yeah, so I believe so. In about 18 months ago, we launched what we call Priceless Planet, and the idea of behind Priceless Planet is to say, look, we hear many of our customers having that debate in the boardroom, in their boardrooms, banks and merchants, and finding it not that easy to translate it into business action. And so what our teams have done, and this is really a groundswell within the company, to say, well, actually, as a network, why shouldn't we federate these efforts? Why, instead of having each company do individual actions in a very fragmented way, why don't we propose a platform whereby we can bundle and federate these efforts and do this together in a much more impactful way? And very quickly, and this is actually our entire company, because we open this to all our partners, and very quickly the Priceless Planet Coalition added up to 80 companies joining us, large companies like Itaú, like HSBC, like MTA, the New York metro station, like Lyft, like LLB, like Citibank, joined our coalition to say, yeah, actually, let's not fragment. Let's actually bundle our efforts, and let's join this coalition with the aim of taking climate action to consumers and to ultimately, collect funding into tree planting.
An
And so
important
this,
point of principle here, has that been a real accelerator and multiplier, the fact you've come together?
yeah, no, I mean, I've been surprised that actually people are flocking towards that as quickly. It's difficult for a large organization to take a decision to join a coalition, but the speed at which that happened is a testimony to the fact that it's in the consciousness of all the banks, but it's also a testimony on the enormous energy that within our company, our employees have put against this. It's a really impressive to see the kind of mobilization against for this.
Now, that's the way you're adjusting internally, Jorn. That's the way you've been changing the culture, the mindset, the way you've been operating and moving it very fast. What about how you want to empower consumers, us, who spend anything from £1.50, I'm sorry, I'm using UK language here, but £1.50, €2 for a coffee, to anything which could be a massive bill for a vacation, or so much, which could be an enormous spending moment. How much can you actually influence us to be sustainable in the way we spend our money?
Well, I don't think we can or should influence you. I think we should inform you. I think we should give you the tools to make your decisions. And the interesting thing is that people do want that. They do want to. I mean, we've done research, and 85 of the people that we interviewed is very keen to take personal action in order to help the climate. But a very large portion of those people don't actually quite know how. Yes, you can eat less meat, and yes, you can take the bicycle instead of the car. People know that, but they don't actually realize what the carbon impact is of many of their actions or purchases. And so without that knowledge, it's very hard to actually make meaningful change.
But
Now,
just let me be clear, if I go and buy a coffee for, say, let's say €2, whatever, is something going to come up and say, do you really want to actually buy this coffee? Because actually it's producing quite a heavy carbon footprint.
Nothing will come up of, do you really want this coffee? But something will come up to say, actually, that coffee represents 400 grams of CO2. And the consumer will be able to say, well, actually, this I need this coffee really now. And or they might say, actually, I need this coffee and I'll plant a tree, or I donate for a tree in order to compensate for my coffee, right? So it's not ours to actually decide what is good or bad for that consumer, or what the consumer's decision.
But you're making us think. You're making us think.
But we want to equip the consumer in order to make those decisions. But I think there's a lot more. I think, Nick, what is interesting, if you look at the entire climate debate, is that a lot is about, what can governments do? A lot is about what should companies do? But there is not that much debate around what consumers can do. Consumers want to do it, and consumers want to participate, but I don't see a whole lot of activity around it to give pointers to consumers or give tools to consumers. And as a company who reaches up to 3 billion consumers, we actually spend a fair amount of time on, okay, so we know consumers want to work on this. We know, can we enlist them somehow in that action? And we came to the point that it is really about informing and empowering them. Informing by giving them some data points to the extent that we have them, but also pointers about, here is a tool on which you can actually take action. And so it is, take action could be changing your behavior, but could also be, actually, I am compensating for my carbon footprint by by donating trees to a project that has a very high bar in terms of the science of tree planting, right? And so we do both of that, Nick. We inform, but we also give them a means to impact. I don't necessarily want people to stop drinking coffee or stop going about their lives. But I wanted to give them the tools on how they can potentially compensate that if they are doing that.
But this is going to create, you will necessitate, I should say, an incredible matrix of information, which could ultimately lead to you intervening in the way people spend money. But first of all, with retailers, for example, however you want to judge a retailer, what's your relationship going to be with them? Because how do you know that a coffee produces a certain amount of carbon? How do you know that a food mixer or a television is produced in a certain way, which will have produced a certain amount of carbon? And therefore, you're asking the question, do you really want to do this? Have you thought about this? It probably won't mean people won't buy the goods, but it will make them think twice about it. Where's the data coming from? What kind of incredible algorithms and matrices are you building here?
Well, it's a great question, and I think we should start by where the end game should be. So in our view, when you buy your television or you buy a T-shirt, you know the price of that television and the T-shirt. You do not know the carbon footprint of that television and that T-shirt. And so you cannot actually today not make a purchase decision of saying, oh, I'll buy that T-shirt instead of that T-shirt based on the carbon footprint. You can do that based on the price, based on the quality, not based on the carbon footprint. I believe that's a very big issue because people make purchase decisions on a limited data set. We need to get to a point, it'll take a long time, but we need to get to a point whereby we go towards carbon labeling of products, whereby every product shows the price as well as the carbon footprint, so you can make an informed decision. And so that manufacturers will actually be seeing the consequences of potential certain behaviors in manufacturing, right? But today we're not there. We're a long way from there simply because nobody goes through the entire supply chain to identify that. And so the question that we asked ourselves is, okay, what do we have today? And how can we take baby steps towards that ultimate goal of having carbon labeling?
Because of course, in a store or online or wherever, there's increasing amount of carbon labeling. But if I understand you correctly, Jorn, what you're saying is you are putting your position at the point of purchase or the point of sale, where you will offer that data as well to enable that judgment still to be made by a customer. Am I right or wrong there?
So all we know today is not what you buy, but we know the amount that you buy at a certain type of merchants, right? We don't know if it's a T-shirt or a pair of jeans or a wristband that you bought, but we know, for example, that you went to a clothing shop. And so all we can do today is to say, well, Nik, you went to a clothing shop. The average carbon footprint for a £50 spend in a clothing shops is X. Say it's 12 kilograms of CO2. That's the information that we can derive from the fact that that you bought for £50 in a clothes shop, and we can send that information to your bank. The bank knows. The bank can provide that in your banking app. And so today we can provide on your Mastercard spend, Nik, an estimate of your carbon footprint over your different purchases. Over time, I think that the accuracy of that data will improve as more and more companies and manufacturers will provide carbon labeling or actually a supply chain footprint, supply chain proof of provenance of that carbon. And so we believe that accuracy is going to go up. Today, it's an estimate, but it's an estimate we believe is a first step to inform consumers that actually their purchases have certain consequences. And as a result, they can compensate for it, or they can alternatively change their behaviors. Now, we have established a sustainability lab, and the whole purpose of that lab is to actually, through technology, think, okay, how can we continue to make progress? How do we work with manufacturers, with retailers, with other parties in the value chain to get to better data, to get to better information to consumers, while at the same time, and that's extremely important for us, keep data privacy top of mind. Again, we do not want to know that Nik is Nik. That's not our business. We do not want to know what Nik buys. That's not our business. But we want to inform and provide tools to Nik to make sure that Nik can make decisions accordingly.
Now, not everyone will be comfortable with this. Do you expect any pushback, or do you think you've got just a wave of acceptance and inevitability? Quickly, if you can, Jorn.
No, I expect pushback for sure. And look, we'll get pushback from climate activists that probably believe it's maybe not enough. And it's a good thing that there's people out there who, keep us on our toes and push us. I expect pushback from people who think actually the data you provide me, Mastercard, is not accurate enough. And so it's misleading. The reality is it's not entirely accurate because that data is not available, but it is a baby step. I think it is very, I think as a company, you have to accept that you're getting into a slightly uncomfortable space, that you will get pushback, but that is not enough of a reason to just stand by and do nothing. I think you need to take a risk. You need to be a little bit brave. You need to accept that the people who push back do so to make you better, to make you to keep you on your toes. And yes, we will get feedback, and we'll have to work with that, and we'll improve accordingly.
Quick question: is this now moving amazingly fast? Net zero has to be achieved not by 2050, but really by 2030, even 2025 for many companies who are making it very clear their ambitions. Can what you're describing be achieved much faster than you might have expected?
Well, I think you see. So first, it has to move much faster. As a parent, I am, extraordinarily worried with that, and I think many others. I see a real momentum and a real desire among many players out there, many corporate players out there, to work together and to take action. And something as enormous as achieving carbon labeling in order to change manufacturing process across the world does need that level of cooperation. I actually happen to believe that if we can achieve that, and if we can bring people together, and if we can innovate and put technology to the right work, it can make a very, very material impact how people buy, but more importantly, how companies manufacture. And ultimately, that is going to bring the change that we need. So, I'm optimistic despite the big worries, because I see that desire of many companies to work together and to make a change.
Jorn Lambert, Chief Digital Officer for Mastercard. Fascinating to know that this amount of information can be detected, can also be part of a purchase decision now, wherever you're buying anything, however big or however small it is. Thanks very much indeed for joining us at this Climate Action Studio. We're much appreciated. And actually, I'm looking forward to talking to you again in maybe a year's time to find out how much progress you've made and how much of an intervention you've made into purchase decisions, and how much people may think twice about what they're buying when they see the flag going up. But thank you very much indeed for sharing your vision with us.
Thank you for having us, Nik. Bye-bye.